This is at ISO 1600 on the 80D with the 18-135 lens. And we are at 3.5 for aperture and 18 millimeters wide on the lens itself. This is an early settler homestead home or cabin. They say that this is roughly around turn of the century, 1900, 1901. Let's do a zoom in on the fireplace here. I'm just handheld here, so pardon me if it's a little shaky. We switch up to ISO 3200, and this is still the early settlers 1900, 1901 home here, and we're at ISO 3200. Looks very good in the LCD. I'd be interested to see how clean this looks when we get it back to the office and onto the computer. So here we've got the kitchen table with the bread basket. See if we can zoom in handheld here, right in on that rolling pin. So we're up to aperture, we're at 5. We are at the, we're at 5.0 on aperture. We'll zoom back out. It's probably a little shaky. We are shooting handheld once again. And now we're at ISO 6400. So just for comparison. And the meter is showing that we're right about spot on. I kind of like the exposure better when we were at 32, and even the 16 was kind of a nice moody looking lighting. But we're still in the early home, the 1900 turn of the century home. We're a little hot right here on the exposure, I think. I'm going to turn that down a bit. Now we're up to shutter speed of 1/100th of a second. This is the dairy and cheese display. It looks like the dual pixel AF is tracking nicely as I walk in closer here. We're still at 1600 ISO. And these are, let's see if we can get in on that sign. Maybe not. It's a surge milker and a vacuum pump. And then of course also we have this milk jug here. Let's go to ISO 3200. There we go, we bumped it up to ISO 3200. And you can see how clean it is here at ISO 3200. Once again, this is ISO 3200 on the Canon 80D, the 18-135. It's very impressive how well the dual pixel AF keeps focus on here. And let's take it to ISO 6400. We are at 6400 right now. As we can see, it's actually a little hot. I'm going to see about turning that to correcting our exposure. We're going to 5.6 on the aperture here. So that's at ISO 6400, 5.6 on our aperture. Tight shot there. I think that that's the vacuum pump. It's either the surge milker or the vacuum pump. I do not know. Here we've got this old Thomas organ, and this is at ISO 3200 again. Get the camera in close here. Shooting all handheld on the 80D. Give you a close-up of the keyboard. And this is at ISO 3200. And right beside the organ, you've probably seen this here on the channel before. This is the, I guess it's a type of sewing machine. Knitting machine, it says here on the placard. We'll get in a little close there. Move myself out of the way of our lighting. And right beside it, we've got a really old lawnmower. It's a Eureka Canadian clipper. Let's bump the ISO up to 6400 here, because it is dimmer here anyways. And there we go, we're at 6400 ISO on the Canon 80D. And there is the Eureka again at 6400 ISO. And here's the knitting machine. at 6400 ISO. We're at f5.6, 1/60th of a second. And there is our organ, our Thomas organ. Come in nice and close on the keyboard again. And this is the Oxford Rifles display. And this has some of the uniforms, as you can see here, and a couple of the drums the regiment used to use. Let's see if we can get some sound effects here for you. It's kind of faint. Don't know if you can hear it. Okay, so at 1600 we are a little underexposed. I'm going to back us back up to f3.5. Let's take the camera to ISO 3200. And that's a little better on our exposure here. Maybe a little bit hot. We'll go to f4. Seems about right there. We'll come in on these uniform here. And on the drums. Once again, ISO 3200 on the Canon 80D with the 18 to 135. And just to see how it compares, let's take it up to ISO 6400. As you can see, we're getting overexposed here, so we're going to take the aperture to f5. Let's go to f5.6. That looks a little better. It's showing slightly underexposed on the meter, but I think visually this looks about where we want to be. And there's the drums, f5.6, ISO 6400, and up on our uniform. This gives you an idea how clean the video footage is. We're at the World War I nursing station display, and this is always interesting to shoot. We've got the nurse here in the corner, the mannequin of the nurse. And then if we swing over here, have to correct our exposure. We're at ISO 3200. We're going to bring the aperture up here to 5.6. Looks a little better on that mannequin, maybe 6.3. You can see how it's doing at 3200. Let's have a peek at 6400, how we're doing here. We're going to have to bring the aperture up again just to compensate for the correct exposure. But it gives you an idea of how the camera performs at ISO 6400. And as we come back over to our nurse, probably going to want to dial down the aperture again to open it up a bit. That's at 6.3, ISO 6400 here on the Canon 80D. Once again, this is with the 18 to 135. We've got some World War II uniforms here and an old Victory Bonds poster. We're going to grab some footage with the Canon 80D, once again with the 18 to 135, the new USM lens, and we're going to see it at 1600, 3200, and 64. I haven't been going above 64. Maybe I'll do a couple here just to show you. I think it's probably not where you're going to want to go, but hey, let's give it a shot. So here's the uniforms. This is at ISO 1600, and we've got our Victory Bonds poster. It's probably a little hot exposure-wise in comparison to the uniforms. And there's an old telegraphs machines there as well. So we're going to bump this up to 3200. That's 3200, which actually isn't too bad on the uniforms. The exposure meter here on the 80D is showing it right bang on at perfect exposure. But I think, as you can see, we're going to get a little hot on the Victory Bonds. So I'm going to turn our aperture down to 5.6 there, which actually doesn't look too bad visually here in the LCD on the uniforms as well. So that's ISO 3200 here on the Canon 80D. Let's crank it up to 64. And we're probably going to have to, well, it's not too bad an exposure on those uniforms. I'm going to take the exposure to 6.3. That's f7, not 7.1. That should do us pretty good over here on the poster. Maybe take that to f8. We're at f8, ISO 6400 on the Canon 80D here. And then, out of curiosity, we will take it up a notch from ISO 6400. Let's go up to, well, it looks like the limit here, it's not letting me go past, oh, here we go, I must have been the wrong dial. 12,800, this is what we're at right now, 12,800, which actually looks quite good in the LCD. I'll be interested to see this on the computer when I'm processing it, how it looks for grain and noise, but that looks pretty good. We're at f8, ISO 12,800, and surprisingly good from what I'm seeing on the LCD here. I'm going to turn us up to f10 there for the Victory Bonds poster. So this is the original council chambers from here in Woodstock from over 100 years ago. And they restored it here. Looks pretty neat. I'm going to take the 80D. I'm going to pan the room. We're going to start at 1600. I'm going to bump it to 32. Going to go to 64. And then we'll go to 12,800 again just to see how it looks. Because I'm curious to see, once I get this on the computer, how usable is it that high? I would have thought 6400 was the ceiling, but it's looking not bad on the LCD. So here we are at ISO 1600. We're at f3.5, 18 mils on the 18 to 135 USM lens. It's hard to back up because I have a door right here, as you can see. So if I go back too far to get more of the room in, we're going to get the door in. But this is the old council chambers here at the Woodstock Museum. And if I bump it up to 3200 here, that's 3200. It looks like we're a little warm, although the exposure meter is saying we're good. So that's ISO 3200 at f3.5, 18 mils. Let's take it to ISO 6400. We're definitely going to have to adjust our exposure here. Okay, so this, according to the meter, is good. I think we need to be at about f5.6, which is where we're at right now. So this is ISO 6400. f5.6, and this is the old council chambers room here at the Woodstock Museum. Now let's take it one more. Let's take it up to ISO 12,800. I guess one more is relative, depends if you're going what increments of stops you're going, but we're going to need to bump this up to about ISO 7.1. I think this looks good, ISO 8. According to the meter, 7.1 is where we want to be here, so let's leave it there. This is 12,800 on the Canon 80D here in the council chamber room. 12,800 ISO. Be very interesting to see how this looks on the screen when we get it onto the computer. This is ISO 1600. We've got some interesting specs on butter. Canada's butter opportunity. Britain bought before the war 452 million pounds. Shortage due to the war, 209 million pounds. 12 years ago, Canada sold 33 million pounds. 2 years ago, Canada sold 6 million pounds. Those are all dates, I guess, prior to the war. Let's go to ISO 3200. We're going to turn the exposure up to f5 according to the meter here. And there we are at ISO 3200 on the butter display here. We're going to jump up to ISO 6400. We're going to bring it up to f6.3. f7.1 is where the meter here on the 80D says we're good. So that's f7.1, ISO 6400. And then just to see how it'll do, let's take it up to 12,800. And we're going to turn this to f10 is where the meter says we're good. Looks a little dark to me. I'm going to go to f9. This is ISO 12,800 on the Canon 80D. This is the organ display. You could call it organ alley here. What I've done is I've put the 80D into shutter priority. So I left it fixed at 1/60th of a second, and then I've left it at auto ISO. I've put the ISO into auto to see how it walks us through here. It's pretty bright over here, so it's probably not too bad. And it's not giving me a visual readout of what ISO it's actually at, so I can't walk you through that as we're walking here. I should note too that the audio here is all the onboard mics from the Canon 80D, which I've been very impressed with the sound coming out of them, so I haven't really felt the need to add the Rode mic, but I also, you know, with the review, just wanted you guys to hear what the mics of the onboard mics from the 80D sound like. All right, we're gonna head over here toward the Barbershop. This is the old Barbershop, just off the corner of the organ displays there. You can see the old phone hanging on the wall. We are ISO 1600, 18mm wide on the 18-135 USM lens, and we are at f3.5. I'm going to switch it up to ISO 3200. That's where we're at now here. And the meter is still showing we're about a third or a half a stop low, so I'm not going to adjust our aperture here, but just give you a quick overview at 3200 of the Barbershop here. We've got the dual pixel AF autofocus engaged, although with it at the 18mm wide end here and at this aperture, it doesn't seem to be needing to readjust focus. Come in a little closer on the barber chair, and then we'll go to ISO 6400. Now, we're a little hot now, I believe. Yeah, we're about 2/3 of a stop, so we're going to go to f4 and then to f4.5. So this is ISO 6400, ISO or aperture f4.5. Once again, 6400. We'll just pan the Barbershop, give you an idea what the ISO at 6400 looks like in video footage here. Get in a little closer on the barber chair. And then we're going to take it to ISO 12800, just because we can. Now, 12800 again looks a little bit hot here, so we're going to go to f6.3 is what the meter is showing is bang on. So I'm going to walk backwards here, pan out for you on the Barbershop. This is a 12800 ISO. Get it in close on the old phone. I remember these. Some of you may not. Some of the implements and tools in the shelving here. 12,800 ISO. This is fairly high by most standards. You could see me in the mirror with the 80D. And there's the old bag there. And of course our sign admonishing us to do not touch. And we've got some shoe shine equipment. Back in the day when I guess you get your shoes shined when you went to the barbers. So that's ISO 12800. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of the tour here at the Woodstock Museum. Lots of neat stuff to see. I usually come in here when I want to test the ISO and different things because some great challenging lighting situations. The Canon 80D seem to perform admirably, so I'm looking forward to getting the footage onto the computer, seeing how it looks, because all I've seen here is what I'm seeing on the LCD, which looks really good, and so far seems impressive. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Stay tuned. We'll be back soon with more on the Canon 80D here at artoftheimage.com.